What's the date on that? I'm going to find the minute.
We're sending our content to a third party. Ooh.
Oh, that's just the YouTube streaming.
Okay.
It was like February 9th or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, this is February 7th.
All right, everyone. I will call this committee of the whole meeting for Monday, December 18th, 2023 to order, and start in a good way by acknowledging with gratitude that we live and work on the traditional unceded territory of the Squamish Nation. These peoples have been stewards of these lands and waters surrounding the Hualahan Island. We'll look to corporate officer for the introduction of any late items.
No, items.
And we'll look to council for a motion to approve the agenda for the December 18th, 2023 meeting, moved by Councillor Saunders, seconded by Councillor Wake. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Aye. Carries. And 3, staff reports 3.1, terms of reference for an official community plan steering committee. Councillor Getty is here with us now. Mr. Martin, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I have just a brief presentation. The report that's on the agenda is the report that we presented at, I think, the first one here. And so this is just sort of to go over some of those same points that were discussed at that meeting. So in your agenda, they have a draft terms of reference for an OCP steering committee. And so as far as we see, it's like there's sort of 4 key areas of the terms of reference for council's discussion. So one is just the first statement in the terms of reference. So the first sort of 2/3 of this purpose is sort of what the steering committee is going to do. It's providing meaningful input, recommendations about the creation of a revised OCP, provide guidance on the project, long-term planning principles, policy development, ideas for partnership. So really trying to get the point across that the steering committee is playing a general role in this OCP process. It's not an advisory committee. It's not just providing, some token input, but it's really helping shape the OCP from start to finish of this process. And then the part highlighted in yellow at the end is this idea of trying to find ways council wants to give the steering committee some sort of overall goal or focus to do this OCP update on. So in this case, what we've put in here is that it's an ultimate goal of adopting an updated OCP that focuses on sustainability, reconciliation, community connectivity, and the island's circular economy. And those are themes that have been discussed by council, and so staff put them in for discussion. Okay, the second being then the mandate, which duplicates a little bit the purpose, and I apologize, this text ends up being a fair bit smaller. But so again, just with that A that's highlighted, is finding another sort of avenue in the terms of reference to insert some guidance and guidance for the steering committee. It's saying that we want the revised OCP to reflect these goals, these principles. So it's not sort of prejudging the outcome of the OCP, but it's saying that when you're developing the OCP and the policies, you should have these principles in mind. So again, that's sort of there for council discussion. Many terms of reference, some terms of reference include statements like this and some don't. It's really up to what council wants to see, but the idea being that if you feel that the revised OCP should reflect certain values or goals or whatever it may be, better to tell the steering committee now that this is what you want to see. And the rest of the points on there are similar to the purpose. They're providing guidance to council but going through exactly what they're guiding. So the type and nature of public engagement. So we haven't prepared an engagement plan for the OCP. We really wanted that to be part of the work of the steering committee, that the steering committee isn't being selected and being told, here's the engagement consultant, here's the engagement plan. It's already laid out, but actually the steering committee is part of forming that plan. Identifying key issues, providing guidance, reviewing, providing comments on draft OCP. All right, so purpose mandate. Number 3 being membership, so key questions being number of council members on the committee. So when we were looking at forming it, the most natural way that you would create a steering committee is as a select committee of council, and the community charter, which does mandate council members be selected on the steering committee. I know the previous steering committee for Bowen did not have council members. And I would say as staff, we probably feel that all of our committees have council members, and that's sort of a key connection point between the committees and council. And also knowing that, at least in my experience, I feel like it would be a challenge for council having not been part of that steering committee process to then end up with a draft bylaw of an OCP that councillors weren't a part of the sort of the process in creating. But councillors may have other opinions on that. And then overall, like number of other committee members, and those kind of play a role together. Like if there's going to be 3 council members on the committee, you probably want more other committee members, versus if there's 1 council member, you could have a smaller overall committee, and so this sort of play off each other. And then composition of other committee members. So we talked at the last meeting. I think the direction I was hearing from council was desire to not call out specific organizations in the terms of reference, but just the terms of reference should say that, the committee members are reflecting a diverse subset of Bowen Island, and then council will then have a role in selecting the members of trying to ensure that diversity exists. And number 4, there's no sort of questions it's sort of the generic in terms of reference. We hold meetings, there's somebody there clerking there, the need for quorum, whatever else falls from it. And then the other piece to discuss is this idea of a project charter. So some of this comes from how best for council to provide an opportunity to guide the steering committee in their review purpose. So in the review process. So as I've shown, including language in the purpose and mandate section of the terms of reference can work if that's sort of, the extent of guidance council wants to provide. But if it gets more detailed, then maybe it's best done in a separate document. So like a project charter that can be, those can be quite involved and time consuming as well. So it's sort of a caution of, okay, how long do we want to spend setting everything up, but setting it up well? And then the advantage to that being, okay, if we have a terms of reference, or at least a draft terms of reference council's comfortable with, sort of the advertising for members can take place while the project charter is being developed. And just highlighting again, provincial legislation entailing changes to the OCP requirements. So Bill 44, which is recently adopted, would require an OCP provide at least a 20-year total number of housing units required. So in the new year, we'll have to do an update of our housing needs report. The province says in early 2024, they're going to come out with guidelines for that and requirements for that, as well as funding that is sort of unspecified. But in the last meeting I had with the ministry, they were saying that it would be allocated funding instead of competitive funding. So no one should expect some funding to do some of the background work for the housing needs piece that will then tie into the OCP. And that's just the recommendation that's in your agenda about recommending council direct staff to amend the draft terms of reference and be adopted depending on council's comfort at the end of this meeting. That's the end of what I had to present. So.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fast.
Thank you. I think I just missed a few words at the beginning when I was, I had some sound difficulties. Speaking to the planner here, just a question, did you say that you were expecting this committee to be an advisory committee to council or not?
Through the chair, I think I was just saying I've set it up to be a steering committee so that they would be more involved in the process than like just sort of advising at times, but we wanted meaningful input from the committee.
Thank you. I just had heard the word advisory come popping out amidst some sort of blurry sound, so I wasn't sure. Thank you very much.
But your draft terms of reference does have them set up as an advisory committee, if I'm reading them correctly. I mean, it's a select committee.
So it's set up as a select committee, yeah, and I mean providing advice, but I think what I was trying to say was just they're more than just advisory in that they're supposed to provide meaningful input and help guide the process and not just,
So roll up their sleeves and do
yeah, yeah.
a little, yeah, like some of the committees do that, and some of the committees just receive reports and comment on.
Yeah.
Counselor Fast and then to Liam.
Thanks. I just want to check, I do have some suggestions for the, a few word changes, like 4 or 5 in the draft terms of reference that is linked to on the, agenda in the material from November 14th, right? And then, so just letting people know whenever you're ready to look at those draft terms of reference, I just have a couple of suggestions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And to our CAO.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just going to expand a little bit on the committee piece, and I think it does need to be a select committee. You know, if we're going to stick with a committee structure, I don't think a standing committee is the appropriate one. I think a select committee is the.
I'm having trouble hearing you. Can you speak up?
Is that any better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just thinking that a select committee is the right committee, but calling it a select steering committee in a similar way, we have the select steering committee for the community center. And I agree with the planner that it really does need to be a working committee but ultimately all committees are advisory to council.
Thank you. So maybe to Councillor Getty, are you looking to jump in here?
I've got a couple of comments.
Sure.
I didn't see in the terms of reference or in any of the object or the mandate that any reference to the Islands Trust. And I think that that was essential when we did the change over to the municipality. And I think that that would be very, very helpful to this community if it were somehow included. And I think that I've spent a great deal of time trying to figure out what circular economy was all about. I don't think that that's something that is widely known or understood. So some way of, I like the principles and I like the idea, but I think it's something that's going to be new and needs better, more explanation somehow, somewhere.
Sure. And just to the point, the Islands Trust, I always said in the report that the terms of reference, like, you don't have to list things that has to happen. Like, it's, I think somewhere it says the OCP has to follow legislation. So it's like, well, it has to comply with the policy statement. Whether or not, like, if the terms of reference says, well, it needs to be an OCP that follows legislation, it's like it has to follow the Islands Trust Act and the policy statement. And same with whatever is required in the Local Government Act. But maybe even in the background, it could be stressed that, like, well, a municipality is a municipality within the Islands Trust. So it's sort of mentioned as a framework for the OCP.
So maybe to the planner, just as we embark on this discussion, there was a number of points in the yellow that it looks like that we need to sort out, like the composition of the committee, et cetera, et cetera. What do you think is the best way to work this process? Just go down the list, or should we look at the terms of reference generally?
Yeah, I think maybe to start with membership and then to look at the purpose mandate piece, I think would be helpful. Getting clarity from council on those points.
Okay. And Councillor Fast, you have your hand up?
Yes, thanks. I've got a number of comments to make, and I'm happy to, if we're going to take the planner's lead on following along with the slides, that's great. And I'll pick up my extra ones at the end if you like.
Okay. So what should we, do you want to start with purpose and mandate or get into committee composition? What's the?
I mean, I thought maybe membership was a more closed discussion, so maybe it could go faster at the start in terms of, it ends up being numbers. And so I have in here just, members of council, which is unspecified, a number of community members is unspecified. And to some extent, the members of the community could flex a bit depending on, like who applies. So you could say, oh, there should be 8, and then you get 9 amazing applications. There's nothing sort of blocking council from them saying, oh, well, let's actually amend it and let's add an additional person because we really value all these people's inputs.
Taking my reference back.
Okay. But so just in terms of that, it's like if council has a decision on, members of council, what's an appropriate amount of councillors on it, and then from that, number of committee members and so forth, size of the committee.
Councillor Fast?
Thank you. I'll start out with the members of council. For one thing, I would be happy to serve on this committee, whether it's 1 or 2. I don't mind. I think might be better with 2. Anyway, that would be a suggestion just because I could bring some continuity. And I also think they should be non-voting to be in a better sort of liaison role, because we always have our opportunity to vote when we're at council, but that would be, I think, help citizens trust the process more, as well, with councillors sitting on the committee but not being voting members. So I would propose 1 or 2, and I'd be happy to stand for that as a past steering committee chair and non-voting. That's my input.
Thank you. Any other thoughts as to number of council members on the committee? Councillor Wake.
I was thinking 2 or 3, so I'll just throw that into the mix. I think the more engagement, the better. This is really about the communication back and forth.
Councillor Saunders.
I'm very much a less is more kind of person, so 4 is way too many. My experience with committees is they can get bogged down if there's too many people involved in them, and I'm sure everybody's experienced that. On the other hand, bringing a wide range of experience has value as well, so there's a lot to think about there, but I'm inclined to agree with Councillor White that 2 or 3 seems the appropriate number.
Councillor Morse.
Well, you can't have 4 because then you have a quorum of council.
See,
So
I knew that.
I guess
You knew it.
I'm definitely leaning toward the non-voting liaison. For some reason, the motions from the last time around, and I dug up, we were going to have 2 council members, but there never were council members that I can, so I found my binder, but only last night. And I guess, so non-voting, and 2, and that way if somebody can't attend, or you can, I think we're gonna have some very varied viewpoints on what needs to be done with the OCP. So
Right.
having 2 people helps spread that out a little bit. Yeah, so if we're only talking about council members at this point, not the total size of the community. I think the community members have to be very broadly selected so we have a broad representation of the community.
Mhm.
And I did find a request that went out for volunteers from the last time, which I think was quite thorough. And so I'll bring that up when we get to talking about community members.
Councillor Getty.
Would your position as mayor be ex officio on any of these committees? And second question is, are we gonna have representation from the existing committees? Because we're all on those as well.
Right.
So if we've got, it's always got a working group, and depending on how the rest of it is made up. I mean, I don't want to pile on more meetings personally. I think that in terms of representation from council and the larger community, and I think there's interests that aren't covered by the existing committees. Like children and young people, elderly, seniors, maybe I'm not sure how we can involve possibly people from Squamish Nation. Somehow or other, something more than just reading a document that's been created after the fact. Some of those other issues and not having it be too many people, I think, getting to 12, even with absenteeism, and it's really hard to have a conversation.
In terms of my role, I'm not sure whether it'd be formally appointed or I might just show up. You know, any council member can show up to any committee meeting as it is. I'd be inclined to agree that 2 to 3 would be a good number.
When we talk about this, the more I'm inclined to think 2 is a better number than 3. Because you're right, we are going to have, ultimately we're going to end up talking about it as recommendations come forward from the steering committee. And we're going to have a lot of opportunity to discuss that here. And it leaves less of a heavy hand of council in the meetings and more opportunity for the public to perhaps engage a bit more.
Okay. Councillor Fast?
I'm fine with this, what sounds like 2 members of council, both non-voting. That sounds good to me. And I just wanted to say, in terms of numbers for the members, last time there were 8. Very shortly after the beginning, 2 of those initial members stepped away for health reasons. So we had to appoint a couple more to fill in. And there were absences due to other life events and holidays and things like that. So 8 was good. But bearing in mind, sometimes we need to, you might want to start a little higher in case people do leave, but you don't know what's going to happen. I like 8. Thank you. Or do you need to break a tie? It didn't seem to be very much voting, but as I recall, but I think uneven number is probably better, 7 or 9. 9, I think, would be better with absences. Over.
Thank you, Councillor Fast. So like 9 is a total size, including the councillors then?
Councillors are non-voting, so. That's
You would have seven voting members and two council members?
I was actually thinking 9 committee members and
Okay.
2 non-voting council members.
So 11?
Yeah.
See too much disagreement with that. Councillor Saunders?
I'm not disagreeing with it in any way because I don't know what the appropriate number is. I will say, we've already, there have been several comments already about broad representation without really defining what that means. There's not, and it's almost impossible to define because you start getting intersectional and we've got all kinds of different groups that would want to be represented, and we're not going to be able to do that effectively with 31 different committee members. So whether it's 9 or 11, I think, not completely familiar. Like from what I've seen with other committees, it's advertised, you want to be on the committee, people send in their bio and say, here's sort of the things I've done that might relate. I'm wondering if for something like this, and it does have great import and it's going to have long lasting import here, well beyond, the immediate future. It's going to last, this is what, a decade and more since we last did this. And so I'm wondering if it's possible, whether we go with 9 or 11 when staff goes out and starts searching for those people or accepting applications, if we can't tailor the application in some way a little bit more to try and find that broad representation. I'm not really sure how that would work. But rather than people coming and saying, here's all the things I do, we go and say, here's the things we'd like to see, perhaps, something along those lines. I don't know for sure how that'd work, but I think it might help us get the broader representation we're looking for.
Right. Right, and yeah, and I would say that I think for this committee, there would need to be more of a recruiting effort. Going out and selecting people. I would probably also like to see the chair and the vice chair of this committee appointed by council, as opposed to it being self-elected.
So the last time around, the chair was appointed by council before we started the recruitment
Right.
process. And the last time around, this is the mail drop that went out. But there was quite a bit of discussion in the minutes of February 9th, or February 16th, 2009, about the skill set needed, the various, as I think has been mentioned. But one of the very interesting things that we did, which I've forgotten about, was we were asking for up to 500-word reasons why you wanted to be on. But also you had to be nominated by 2 residents of Long Island.
Oh, interesting.
Which I think is sort of, and again, the broad range of people who have an environmental background, people who have an economic background. I think Daniel has some of that, and then youth and seniors, and I don't. So that was, and it was 8 people, but I'm okay with going for 11 with the 2 non-voting councillors. And if they're non-voting, do they count in the quorum?
Typically, no.
I didn't think so. I just wanted to confirm that. So you'd only be dealing with your quorum on the basis of 9, so that's not, I think so bad. Hard to do.
Councillor Fast?
Thank you. Yeah. Councillor Morris is correct. However, it was a maximum 500-word statement of interest that was invited. And so the word maximum is important there, because otherwise people just start attaching their CVs. And it's hard for the folks who have to make the selection to go through. There is wording in the former terms of reference that might be helpful in terms of inviting people, but anyway, I can send some of this info along, but I like the idea of this piece of text. The OCP steering committee should reflect the diverse community that is Bowen Island, and to that end, the composition of the committee should give consideration to location of residence, age, or gender. The steering committee should be seen as a committee of the community, seeking input, comments, and feedback in a regular and timely manner. Mechanisms to be developed. Anyway, so I just I think the idea of a maximum 500-word statement of interest is important here. I don't know about the nominations, because that was when there were no councillors on these committees, and it was kind of run as quite a separate process. And there was a selection committee that was actually choosing the people. And they were independently, together with the chair, choosing the committee members. So I don't know whether we need nominations. However, it is a long-term important role, and it might be a good thing to do. I also had a question about 3.2, which is committee members shall reside or be employed and or own or have interest in a property on Bowen Island. I don't know about that last part, and or own or have interest in a property. That opens it to a non-resident property owner to be on the committee. And I know there's selection after that, but I wondered whether we might want to discuss whether they need to be residents or be employed and or own or have interest in property. I don't think that third one should be part of an official community plan, which is for the community. by the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Morse.
I think there's a lot of part-time residents here on Bowen Island that are full community members and participate in the community. And the last time around, we advertised for full or part-time residents of Bowen Island. And you had to have been here for 2 years at that point. So I think we should make the committee available to part-time residents. A lot of them, maybe because they're part-time, because they're working off island, might not be able to, meet the time commitment, so they won't apply. But, somebody that's been a part-time resident, family home here for the last 100 years, they should be just as able to apply as anybody else.
My concern, through the chair, if I might.
Yep.
I don't really have a problem with part-time residents. I have a problem with people who are not part of the community and who own or have interest in a property. Perhaps they wouldn't be selected, but maybe we could make that clear. Like somebody who owns part of a property might be somebody who lives in another country and doesn't come to Bowen. Maybe we could be more explicit, and 3.2 could say, shall reside or be employed. Do we want people who are?
Why not?
And then
say part-time resident.
Oh, hang on, keep going, Councillor Fest.
And or be a part-time resident of Bowen Island. I don't mind that. What about the part about or shall be employed? Do people commute to the island to work? Should they have a voice on this committee?
I was wondering about that one. Where did that come from? It's not in our standard select committee terms of reference.
I'm not sure offhand. I would have thought the way we were borrowing standard ones, but if council is more comfortable with it just being people who reside full or part-time on Bowen, that's a fairly simple change.
But through the chair, I do like that better because I think this is a committee of the community, and it's a plan. It's sort of the community's plan that we're asking for community input and direction that'll guide everybody in the community, not just the municipality. But the focus is on the word community. For me, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fest. Councillor Saunders?
Thanks. I mean, we're going to be able to filter a lot of this in any event when we see the responses, and that's part of the tailoring what's out there, like, do you live here? But given the comments that were just made, and I generally agree with what I just heard from everybody there, if we're going to say part-time, we're going to have to define what part-time means. If you live here for a week in the summer, does that make you part-time, or do you have to live here 6 months or something along those lines? Like, whatever it is, we do need to define it, I think.
How about part-time resident property owner? So that they have to own property here.
Sure.
Part-time resident, you could say, would be somebody who rented a place for a month.
If you own the place, but you're here for June and that's all, is that someone? I mean, again, we are going to be filtering this on our own without question when we start reading the responses.
Yeah, they're probably not going to be applying because one of the other criteria has to be availability to meet on island on a very frequent basis.
Yep.
Sorry, it doesn't, through the chair?
Yep.
It doesn't say meet on island. I thought it said meet by Zoom.
Oh, okay, I was thinking of the other. Yeah.
This is partly why I'm trying to be a little more careful with this one. Because it's not as simple as, can you make a Wednesday night meeting on Bowen Island?
You're going to have some in-person meetings because you just have to get to know the people a little bit, which is hard to do on Zoom.
Yeah, that's true. There'd probably be a mix, you know. Councillor Getty?
When I moved here in 1980, I think that more than half the houses were part-timers and summer people. And, that's changed, but I don't know what the demographics are now, and I haven't looked at the census material. So if there's somebody that owns property and they're here for a month, that might be like a very small minority interest. They're part of the community, and they have an interest. And, it's tailored to summer filling traffic and busyness in the cove and things that don't happen, aren't the same relevance in the wintertime. But I guess we have to figure out, what minority interests we want to support and include in this. And it's also going, I think if we leave it wide open in terms of the applications, and see what we get in terms of cross-section of the community, then we can at some point fine tune it in terms of what are the interests and who do we want working on this? And that's something that we do control.
Right.
Councilor Saunders, then Councilor Ray.
I think that's sort of what I was trying to say, except that we, because we don't know the 4,200 people who live here, not all of them anyway. You may have been here longer than, a couple of years longer than me. So, but what we need to do is get, in the kind of the initial input is, do you live here year round? Do you live here 3 months of the year, 1 month of the year? And then, like we can accept everything that comes in and say, this is great, we'll review it, thank you. But rather than going back after the fact, saying, by the way, do you actually live here? It'd be nice to know up front is all.
Yeah. That would be, Councilor Wick.
I think we need to define part-time, and my suggestion would be 6 months of the year. And I think it's more important about them residing here and potentially working here than it is about owning property. Because I think what we're looking for is real community involvement, and you can own property here and not be very involved in the community. So I'm not sure why the owning property needs to be.
Just through the chair, I'm aware of some of our advisory committees. We have members who may have been appointed to the committee when they lived on Bowen and subsequently, due to whatever life circumstances, have actually moved off Bowen, but can still be key members of those committees. So I think partly thinking about that, if this is a 2-year process and somebody ends up moving off of Bowen during that period, is the expectation that they leave the committee at that point, or if they're still engaged and still feel connected to the Bowen community, is it that they remain part of the committee as long as they're engaged members, or is the expectation that they?
There's term isn't up to me.
Yes, I mean, in this case, I think the term is until for the project, till the project's done.
Councilor Fast?
2 suggestions through the chair. One is following up on that last point. Sometimes people can be keen volunteers and lose their housing on Bowen and have to leave. And I've known people like that, and that doesn't make them less useful. I think we should just have that they need to be resident on the island for at least 6 months of the year as an initial thing. But I don't think we should terminate them if they are forced off the island through loss of their housing. And then just leave it at that, and let people tell us about their residency in their application shall include kind of thing. That's my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Fast. Councilor Morse?
I just want to use the more broader term, part-time resident. Part-time resident, so that, and we can weed through them. We don't have to put all that in the criteria. We can weed through them when we get the applications. And if it's somebody that we know is only here, 10 times a year, they're not going to really have a sense. So we're not going to appoint them. But then if somebody who's, the professor of the planning department at UBC and has a summer home here and he comes, twice a year because that's all the time he can afford, he might be a very valuable member of the community, of the committee. So I don't want to hamstring us with oh damn, why did we put that in there?
Yep.
When we get the application. So this is more, you know, decide on the number, get people to tell us what their background is, what their CV is, why they want to be on the committee. And then we have to make sure that we've got a broad representation when we appoint people to the committee.
Thank you, Councilor Morris. My comments, I don't even know if we need 3.2 in here, which is the committee members shall reside, be employed and or own or have interest in property on Bowen Island. I would just ask that in the application. And then as council, you know, we'll come together and we'll sift through all those applications. And then it'll be incumbent on us to decide on that mix of residency experience that we'd like to have, and it doesn't hamstring us. And the reality is that by and large, the applications are going to come from Bowen Islanders and not from property developers in Kelowna. We hope, right? But if it's asked explicitly on the application, because I don't know if that's contained in our committee applications right now, just some kind of narrative, what's your connection to Bowen Island, and then
You've got to give us an address.
Yeah, and then do you have residency here? Councillor Fast?
I have a question for the planner. There seems to be an assumption that council is going to be weeding through and selecting members. Will this be something that staff will be doing and bringing us recommendations as ordinary committees? In which case, we want to ease the burden on staff by giving them some hard criteria, like the maximum 500 words statement of interest, and the committee members shall reside at least 6 months of the year on Bowen Island. So my question is, who selects? And will staff go through them and then we go through them as well?
So council would select, but I would imagine that staff would be bringing at least either recommendations or even just criteria. So we can discuss now in terms of, yeah, this is the total number received, and like these are people who meet various criteria. Like I almost picture like a table or something, some sort of, whether it may not be recommendation to say appoint these 7 or these 9, be like these are the various how people, yeah, this is the breakdown of what's received.
I don't remember staff giving us recommendations or committee appointments before. We've always received the full applications and gone through them ourselves, and I would expect we would do the same process.
And some of it may depend, sorry, through the chair, just in terms of like the volume of applications. Like if we get 10 applications, you have to pick 9, it may be more straightforward.
If we get
and if you get 50, then trying to do some more work for council up front to say like your like categories of people or something.
I guess.
Come on in.
Applicant.
Applicant, yeah. Nicely done.
I seem to be missing.
Can I, sorry.
Yes, Councillor Fast?
I think part of the challenge for setting up our new steering committee and for initiating this whole opening up of the official community plan, which is so important to so many people on Bowen, is to create a feeling of trust and transparency so people know who's going to be on the committee. Might be something to consider in terms of setting up a trusted process. And I would think having 3.2 in there as committee members shall reside at least 6 months on Bowen Island would help the trust process get off to a good start, instead of wondering who council will pick and who might get their friends. Anybody out there in the community obviously can send emails and talk to their circles about these kinds of things. And there may be lots of applications come in. I just thought starting off in a good way by having clear terms of reference that say whether people or not are part of the community would be a good way to start. Thank you.
And how are you going to define 6 months? Is it 6 months continuous or 5 days here and 10 days there and have it all up and then you're going to audit that? No, I think we just ask for people to apply.
Ask them. On the application.
In the application form, we ask them to detail their involvement with, I can't find the application form from the last time around.
Excuse me, there was no application form. There was just a request to maximum 500-word statement of interest, as I recall, as an applicant.
Well, it refers to nomination forms being available at Municipal Hall, so I'm assuming the nomination form would have had some information on the person, but anyhow.
We have a standard form, do we not? We have a standard form for committees, do we not?
Yeah, there's a standard application.
Does it say anything in terms of time spent on Bowen in a given year?
Address?
It does have the address, yeah. But I don't think it asks how much time you spent on Bowen. It asks about your interest in committee and what relevant background experience you have.
Just make it a registered voter. Are you a registered voter on Bowen Island?
That includes non-residents.
Which is, to register to vote on the island, I think you've got an interest in the island. Or a large enough interest on the
Yeah,
island.
the other side of that is if there's two people owning a property and you're not a full-time resident, then only one of them gets to be the registered voter. You might want the spouse as the
Right,
committee member, yeah.
So what?
I'm gonna go Saunders, Getty, Wake.
First of all, I think we can, yes, Councillor Fast's concern about trust, just in the initiation of the process by saying who's interested. And if some people are gonna think what they're gonna think, and I'm not gonna try and change their minds on it, but if we just start with the solicitation piece, and we're looking for people that are interested, that feel part of the community and are interested in the community and want to take part in this. I agree with the mayor that, when I think about it, that part 3 is probably not necessary at all in my mind. And I also think that while everything's worthy of lengthy discussion, I think we're starting to split hairs on things here because we're getting into the weeds too far when we're ultimately going to see the 10 or 50 or 150 applications and go through them and make our own judgments off those.
Councillor Getty?
In terms of being a registered voter, I think that's problematic. Got a lot of people that can't vote, other citizens and or other places, and they're very much committed to the community and would be valuable with their input, but they're not registered voters.
Councillor Wake?
I agree with Councillor Saunders. I think we're overthinking this a little bit and getting into the weeds. I think what you suggested, simply asking for a maximum 500-word statement of the nature of your involvement in the community in Bowen Island, and let them explain what that is. And I think that's going to give us a clear enough picture without making a whole bunch of rules.
And Councillor Fast?
I'm also fine with striking 3.2 as long as we keep the community idea front and center. I am, and we ask not just for qualifications, but also for statement of interest in serving on this committee. And then for 3.3, I would go with the second one, the not from the different groups, but from it says the committee will have a diverse membership with respect to. Staff have given us 2 options. The second one is the one I prefer. rather than picking people from particular segments of, or what they call the following areas.
I'm confused. Are you talking about, okay, never mind.
Okay.
I like the second 3.3 as well. But I'm not sure if it's stakeholder interest or just community interest.
I like community interests as opposed to stakeholder.
Interests, communities mentioned the next.
Okay. So we've segued into some of the membership expertise here in the 3.3 section. Any comments on this one to the CAO?
Thank you, Mayor. I was just, I'm glad you picked up on that segue. I was gonna mention that too, and just circle back to see if we landed on a membership numbers, if that got solidified.
Do you want a motion? I move.
I don't know if we need a motion. So the motion
Okay.
that we have here at the end of the recommendation is
Yeah,
to drop
that's
this,
fine.
to drop this back into staff's lap. But I think what Liam is saying is he wants to be sure that he's understood council's intentions with clarity.
Which section talks about the number?
3.1.
I heard it seems to be landing between 2 and 3, and
2 members of council non-voting, I thought is what we'd landed on.
Yes.
That's what we've been hearing. Okay,
That's what I have circled as well.
great. And then 9
Yeah.
members of the community.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And maybe use the language of up to 9.
Sure. Yeah.
And you don't need to sit on the committee in the background, you just need to be up to 9 members of the community. Can we talk about 3.2? What about the be employed bit?
I
I think that the
there was
direction I was
discussion
here was
about getting rid of
removing
3.2.
section 2.2.
Yeah.
Omitting it.
I'm honestly okay with it either way. I don't know how material it will actually be to the types of applications that we take up, and I think to some of the other discussion that we've had here, the takeaways that I'm hearing are really we want to be able to capture some kind of narrative from our applicants, which we saw previously with the 500-word essay, as well as their, that speaks to their connection to Bowen Island and maybe their interest, and then also be sure that we know whether they live on Bowen, whether they're just working on Bowen, what their residency status is. Because it sounds like the discussion that I've seen, there's just all these edge cases that we're trying to deal with in a way that
So are we scratching 3.2? Is that what you're saying?
we could scratch it or keep it the same. It's broad enough that I think it covers pieces. Where I think we're going to run into difficulty is if we spend the next hour talking about, well, what does part-time residency constitute here? 3 months, is it 6 months?
My concern is the word be employed.
Right.
I think you'll have to be a resident or a part-time resident or a property owner. Just the fact that you commute over here every day to work, I don't think is.
Again, sorry.
Councilor.
Well, I understand your point, and somebody that lives in North Van and comes here and works 8 hours or 40 hours a week and leaves. I think we're gonna see that in the application. I don't think we need to address it in 3.2 or whatever it was there. I think we'll know that from the application, then we can make a decision at that point. So, and again, I don't think we necessarily want to preclude it either, because it might be like somebody's working here 40 hours a week and they've got some incredible skills like that are above and beyond anything else. At least like to know about them, they'd be really good, resource maybe for other things kind of thing. So I don't want to preclude that.
Councillor Fast.
I have been convinced by Councillor Saunders and others that we should just leave it in as it is, because sometimes people are commuting now but they've been members of the community for 30 years and have been forced to move to North Vancouver, for example, and they plan to come back. They may even own property. So I think I like leaving the whole thing in as it is, and I apologize for bringing up 3.2.
I think it's been a good discussion.
I'd like to apologize for me apparently arguing in a secular manner, because I was trying to convince you that we need to take it out, not leave it in. So I'm saying I don't think we need that.
You want to delete clause 3.2?
Yeah, I do. Yes.
Right. 3.1 does say 9 community members, and then just lets us define community members as broad as council would like.
Sure.
All right, so, my recommendation to staff then would be to drop 3.2 and see what happens when it comes back to council.
And then, sorry, just the other change that I heard from council was that council would appoint the chair and vice chair.
Yes. That's down in, that would be a change to 4.1.
So we're going to appoint from the list of applicants. Are we going to recruit somebody that we want to be the chair?
I think one of those two options. Either we choose it from the applicants or we recruit somebody. Right. But this feels big enough that I think council would want to retain the ability to appoint the chair and the vice chair.
Well, I guess the last time around, we appointed the chair before we started anything else in the process. So that's sort of why I was asking the question.
Councillor Fast?
The challenge for me here is, last time. That was completely different. David Whitty was here and was involved in all this early thinking and planning. I wonder if we might have council confirm the chair and the vice chair or something like that after the election within the group, because the steering committee will have to know and trust each other, and they will be in the best place to talk to each other about their schedules, about how much time they can do, because the chair of this committee is usually pretty significant time source. We may want to even flag that for applicants to let us know if they're interested in the chair or vice chair position, if they want to let us know in their application. But I'm in agreement with the what's in the current text, that the committee elect them to be confirmed by council. Now, if we didn't go along with it, that would be really hard. I don't know. I'm open to ideas.
And that was my issue, is if we were to say, like the Councillor Fast suggested, council confirm the chair. I think that could potentially open a terrible can of worms. That council overrides the choice of the committee. Then what? Where's their authority to do anything about it?
Yeah.
Councillor Getty?
Yeah, I prefer to I'm not sure how much the time the committee members would spend looking at the 500 word documents and thinking about all the other variables that we're going to have looked at. And I think that if we have some ideas in terms of people that might have the skills to run good meetings, maybe it could be confirmed by the committee that we do the selecting, or be, somehow or other we keep not control, but just understand what it is, that the process that we need to get through.
Right.
I think that's 4.1, right?
Yep.
Council.
So on that line, I think we would have to appoint the chair first. Ask that person if they're willing to be the chair. Get that confirmed before we appoint any of the rest of the committee members.
Yeah.
From a process perspective.
I see Councillor Wake wiggling his mustache over here.
Well, would that mean we're appointing the chair before we go through all the other?
No, we go through them all and then pick the one we would like to see as the chair. But if they don't, if we appoint that person as the chair and the others as members and then go and ask for that person if they's willing to be chair and they say no, then you've got to start all over again.
I think we would have a quiet conversation with the person who we would like to be the chair beforehand. It's not necessarily a control issue for me. I mean, a little bit, but it's just about ensuring quality and excellence and leadership in that seat for that committee. Councillor Wake?
And what you just suggested there, that we would have a quiet conversation, we don't have to put that in here, we can just say we are gonna
We just
appoint the
need to
chair and the vice
understand
chair.
that, yeah.
And we can do it.
Okay.
The rest of it's the standard
Oh,
boilerplate.
I saw the CAO with his hand up. Sorry, Liam, I just looked at the screen.
Oh, that's okay. I just loaded because it sounds like you're landing on a good place here.
Okay.
What about 3.6?
Okay, hang on. Let's go back to 3.3 because we left that one hanging.
Thought we'd agreed on the second one.
Well done.
Is there, it seems like there's general consensus to move towards the second one with perhaps changing stakeholder interest to community interests?
Yeah.
Okay. And then where are we going next?
3.6.
3.6.
Would that be, excuse me,
I'm going to ask Daniel first for some advice on this one here in 3.6.
And I apologize, I think that I updated my draft where it just says staff shall be appointed by the CAO as non-voting members of the committee, which I think is more standard in our other language unless council has particular interest in certain staff members. Most of our committees leave it up to the CAO.
You know, automatic one on the APC.
I don't know if I'm named in the terms of reference or I'm just named as staff. But that would be my recommendation.
So we can trust the CAO to, I mean, we would want somebody who's in the planning department.
I think our CEO is best interest.
I would assume so, or you could give direction to the CAO if they appoint someone who you would not like to see.
Right. Councillor Fast?
I like that idea, 3.6, to just say staff shall be appointed by the CAO. Because I see in the text it refers to a minute taker and it refers to obviously these different planning duties, but there may be times when he wants other staff, like for example, the committee clerk or, the Sophie's position, the clerk of council to have that legislative kind of input, or who knows? I like the planner's suggestion for 3.6.
Okay. You're okay with that, Liam? You get to choose who shows up?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure that we're going to want Daniel there, or whichever planner gets tagged with this being their lead project if we end up with additional planning support or from within our current complement. But I'm pretty sure I'm going to want Daniel or one of his team there at every meeting.
Okay. Councillor Fast, is your hand still up?
I was going to move on, but I can take it down.
Okay, what's next to decide about?
So then next, my other questions were about like 1.0, the purpose, and 2.0, the mandate in terms of having language that provides more specific guidance for the committee.
Where are you now?
Sorry.
Right at the top.
Right at the top. So the purpose, like the draft right now talks about, it supports the ultimate goal of adopting an updated OCP that focuses on sustainability, reconciliation, community connectivity, and the island's circular economy. And then those are sort of mirrored a little bit in the mandate section where 2.2A says, the committee will ensure that the revised OCP will follow the principles of the United Nations Declaration of Rights on the Indigenous people, all the principles found in UN Development Goals frame for sustainability and incorporate policies or objectives to support developing Bowen Island as a circular economy. Which, as I said, are sort of those like statements that we've heard from council,
Right.
so included, but sort of open for guidance from council on how they would like to see that reflected. The idea being that if council has a vision for how they want the steering committee to work, it's better to tell them than be disappointed afterwards that it wasn't done that way.
Right. Councillor Fast, then Councillor Morse.
Thank you. Yes, I'm looking at the purpose, and I'm wondering if the words focuses on could be replaced with includes. Because I have a philosophical problem with instructing the steering committee, which is designed to be steering the public process and taking all the input and guiding the planning, through their advice, but being a committee of the community and instructing them to focus on. I think the word includes will capture that, because there's all kinds of other things that's going to go in as well. But if we make sure that I just didn't want to be directing the steering committee to focus on when it could just be include. It seems to me the whole purpose of an OCP review is to review broadly and collect input and look at all the other plans that council has adopted and the other legislation changing and trust policy statement, any of those kinds of things. So I didn't want to direct the committee. Could the word includes? Maybe the planner could talk about, would that be suitable?
Through the chair, yes.
Councillor Morse, then Councillor Getty.
Well, my comment was just going to be why purpose was a question as to why purpose didn't just end updated OCP. And then I don't like focuses, includes is certainly much better, but that whole focuses on sustainability, reconciliation. You've got reconciliation down the bottom, so, and I prefer that ensure that the revised will follow the principles and consider and put all these other things in there. And the circular, I mean, you've got circular economy in the bottom, you put it up at the top. And to me, the big issue, and I don't know if sustainability means diversity, but one of the things that, I want to see out of this is a more diverse community, which means addressing the housing issues. I can't shut my binder.
Good. Councillor Getty.
Sort of along the same lines, in terms of the 1.0 purpose and then 2.0 mandate, in some ways, I think that we need to, if we're talking about reconciliation and circular economy, we've just done a whole bunch of work and trust about the Section 3 mandate to preserve and protect, the economy and I can't remember what the 3 essential elements are, but if we're still part of the trust and we're focusing on making sure that all of our land use planning, which is the official community plan, fits within those 3 essential elements, then we either, the next 2.2, the committee will ensure that the revised community plan will A, B, C, and D, or we put all of those, like Councillor Morse is suggesting, in some specific mention in the purpose, both the purpose and the mandate.
I was only suggesting they go on the mandate, not in the purpose. Purpose ends at an updated OCP.
Okay, well, I think that with respect to support the ultimate goal of adopting and updating an updated OCP that focuses on sustainability, reconciliation, community connectivity, and the island's circular economy. None of that talks about the island's trust mandate. And I think that that is one of the confines that we're working with. And I don't think enough people understand the trust, and that it hasn't had a lot of headlining and coverage. And I think that we are very much a part of it, and we have to make sure that that's part of all these discussions.
And I would offer, so a couple of pieces that I'll offer here is some of this language that have been pieces that I've talked about as well, is that the language of sustainability and circular economy and reconciliation, I don't think any of these are out of alignment with Islands Trust policy or mandate, particularly as it and I think some of them are actually probably more specified than what you see in the Islands Trust. The sustainability piece, when we look at the context of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, that puts us in direct harmony with what we're seeing out of the Biosphere Initiative work here, and very well developed from both a social and environmental standpoint. The circular economy piece comes from, originated in the Community Economic Development Committee, as well as other places that we saw at the Rural Islands Economic Partnership. So when we're talking about donut economics or circular economy or whatever it is, that's really where that is. And we've seen Nanaimo make big strides in that when they updated their community plan to be a donut city. It's just a really weird term, but it's in terms of a comprehensive sort of economic development that embraces the social and environmental limitations of a community. I think it's an interesting way to look. The reconciliation piece, just an update on some of the, because I have done some follow-up since UBCM with the Ministry of Indigenous Affairs. I have an old colleague that works there as an assistant deputy minister, and they reached out this week, and they would be interested in having conversations with us as to what an OCP looks like in context with reconciliation principles, particularly as the province looks to implement TRIPA, and there's an implementation act and all of those pieces coming down the pipe. So I'm not adverse to taking out of the purpose, having this line, the ultimate goal of adopting an updated OCP. But I think if this is the direction that council would like to go in, and I think it is a good one, and I agree with Councillor Fast here that the language of focuses on, I don't think is necessarily a good word, because I think what I would like to see is an OCP that's kind of built upon these principles that, so it's not necessarily includes, but, as we consider every aspect of our land use, as we consider every aspect of our community development, that we're giving thought to, what does that look like in terms of sustainable development? What does that look like in terms of reconciliation? What does that look like in terms of community connectivity? And how does this contribute to a regenerative community economy? So whether it's focuses, includes, or is built on the principles of, I think there's a better way to language it. Those are my comments so far. Councillor Fast?
I'd like built on the principles of. That sounds good to me. Those are clearly sort of global principles, and I like it because it doesn't say focuses on. So that's great. I think those are all good things. Two that are nothing there is inconsistent with the current OCP or with anything I know of from the trust. So I like built on the principles of sustainability, reconciliation. I have a question about community connectivity. I don't know what that means.
You were the planner?
Through the chair, that was flagging for me as I was reading this. I don't know that it's necessary.
Yeah, because I was going to suggest we leave it out. I think it's not included in your slides from today, but it is in that draft. So my proposal is to draw a line through community connectivity and then end the sentence with and the island's circular economy built on the principles of those. Sounds good to me.
Councilor Morris?
Okay. The purpose of the committee is to update the OCP.
Right.
Okay, so that's where purpose should end. What we want them to consider and look at while they're doing it is sustainability, reconciliation, which is already mentioned in 2.2, and circular economy, which is already mentioned in 2.2. But I don't know that the community, donut economy, circular economy, it depends what you read. I mean, one of the articles about circular economy that I was looking at last night is reduce, reuse, recycle, and repurpose. That's what the circular economy is. But when you look at some of the charts for donut economy, they're different. They're a little bit more like ESG, only it's EES. So, you know, there might have to be a whole learning curve as a whole community here. So, but I do like following the principles. Consider the principles. As I said, I don't know where community diversity is in here. And we've got 12 goals in the existing OCP. Are we going to throw those all out?
I think that would be up for the committee to consider.
Well, hopefully that would be something the community would be asked. Do they support the existing 12 goals? And that's the other question, I guess. They are being asked to provide guidance on the type and nature of public engagement. Yes.
Right.
I might have a suggestion.
Yes, Councillor Fest?
I'm looking at the draft terms of reference as they are in the link and seeing some duplication, including the second sentence from the end in the background talks about the same thing as the sentence that we're talking about now, which is repeated again in 2A below. So I'm wondering if we could, with the idea of ending this meeting in a timely manner, we might consider where we want this statement to go. I kind of like having the same material, although sustainability isn't there, that's the trouble. But in 2.2A, A, B, C, has links so people can see exactly what we're talking about, which is nice. But maybe we want to choose where do we want to say this rather than the 3 places. Maybe that'll help us move ahead. Over.
Thank you, Councillor Fest. Just to Councillor Morris, a couple of notes, particularly on the sustainability piece. When we look at the UN Sustainable Development Goals, there are a number of pieces in there that relate to diversity.
There's other things too.
Yeah. So there's gender equality, reduced inequalities, peace and justice and strong institutions. Those are all part of the UN Sustainable Development Goals that I would anticipate we become more familiar with as an OCP process unfolds. Councillor Wick?
Well, I agree that the purpose, I think, should be simpler and not get into all the detail. And whatever we feel is missing in 2.2, let's talk about adding that, but I don't think we need to repeat stuff 3 times.
Okay. Councillor Getty?
Can we agree to some mention of the Islands Trust at some point?
There is a policy statement of the Islands Trust which is mandated to follow. It says thou shalt do this, that, and the next thing in your OCP that it will address. And we have a protocol agreement and everything has to be referred to the Islands Trust. So, and we've got environment, I think, in there somewhere in one of the, so I don't think there needs to be any specific mention about the Islands Trust. There wasn't the last time.
I mean, we don't,
'Cause-
we also don't mention Metro Vancouver or TransLink or.
Exactly. And we're mandated under the Islands Trust Act to follow the Islands Trust policy statement, so that's a piece of background and nothing.
I think in terms of the terms of reference for this committee, I think it's important for the,
They have no choice. They have to follow the Islands Trust policy statement.
right? And I think that if we're going to ask them to ensure that the revised official community plan will follow various principles, that it would be appropriate to mention the Islands Trust. And, you know, it's a different process than Metro and TransLink. And I think the principles in the trust are important for this community, and it's important for people to have that in mind when they're working on this.
It makes sense to remind the committee about that as part of their terms of reference at the beginning here. That would be my proposal. Over.
Thank you. Over to you, to the CEO.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a friendly reminder too, that the trust is re-engaging in a revision of their policy statement, which hopefully aligns with this OCP review. And so that we don't have to then amend our OCP if their policy statement update takes longer than ours. So, so I think we do need to be cognizant of that, and I'm certain this committee will be. But just wanted to remind people.
Thank you. Councillor Fast.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe if the Islands Trust policy statement may take many more years. I don't know for sure. Hopefully it'll be done. But if it does take longer than the OCP, whatever this council adopts as the official community plan stands until an amendment or another review happens. So it wouldn't force another update. But my understanding anyway. Maybe the planner knows.
Through the chair, that's correct. Like when we adopt an OCP, it has to comply with the trust statement that's in effect. And I just wanted to add too, I mean, I think I agree with Councillor Getty that we're listing, principles that the OCP should comply with, that it should mention the trust. And so as I was drafting, I just put it at A at the start of that list to meet the central object, the Islands Trust, to preserve and protect the trust area and its unique amenities and environment for the benefit of the residents of the trust area and of British Columbia. That's taken from the Trust Act. And it may be redundant to say, well, it has to, but I think it's good if we're listing sort of principles that it should comply with, to remember that it has to comply with the Trust Act and those principles.
Councillor Morse.
So as we're talking, so what about all these new provincial legislation that have just come out? We've got to amend our OCP to do. And if we're going to refer to the trust policy statement, I think we have to make a reference to provincial legislation.
Just looking to the other items of the terms here. I think some of those provincial concerns could be captured in the various providing guidance to council, preparation, background information, draft materials. So we could talk about provincial regulations.
Yeah, through the chair, in my mind, to some extent, that lists under, like, there's a number of things in the Local Government Act that OCPs have to comply with. There's a list of things you have to do, and there's a list of things you may do. So the province has recently added a bunch to the stuff you have to do, but it doesn't change that sort of, the Local Government Act piece of it. But almost it's different than the Islands Trust, where maybe there's more sort of nuance, or it's more about like value statements in the Islands Trust Act than are in the Local Government Act?
Okay. Councillor Fast.
If I can move on in B, 2.2B, I just wonder if the word new could be replaced with revised, because it sounds council in preparation of a revised official community plan, not a brand new one. Thank you.
Where are we?
2.2B.
Oh, yes. Well, in some places we've used revised, in some places we've used updated.
But that's the same, but new was different.
Yeah, no. But a revised OCP or an updated OCP in the very first sentence. A renewal and revision. I mean, to me, there's a big, I mean, I'm hoping we will just focus it into an update, but I don't know if using the word revised or renewal and revision implies a much broader scope of work.
Right. Like Councillor Saunders' point from an earlier meeting, I think sometimes you get into these things to revise and update and it just becomes everything ends up on the table.
Well, that's
So part of it, I think, is this committee needs to get into the work to see what it's going to take. To the CAO and then Councillor Fast.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just going to say that perhaps to get at the recognition of the Islands Trust Policy Statement and provincial overriding, not overriding, but overarching provincial legislation, we could just simply say that under 2.2A, ensure that the revised official community plan will be in compliance with provincial legislation, because the Islands Trust policy statement is born out of that legislation. So that would capture everything.
Okay, thank you.
How does that reflect with Daniel's suggestion?
I think Daniel's suggestion was specific to the Islands Trust.
So you're suggesting not put the Islands Trust mandate quote from the Islands Trust Act in there, but just what you're suggesting?
Yeah, just more broadly saying that it will ensure that the revised OCP plan will be in compliance with provincial legislation.
Councillor Fast.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to propose that if that wording is used, that it say including the Islands Trust, just to keep the Islands Trust visible and no surprises. And then down in 2.2B, where it says UN Development Goals Frame for Sustainability, I didn't know what goals frame meant, and I would suggest I click the link. I know exactly what you mean once I see the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals is how I would frame that rather than goals frame. I didn't know what that meant. It could say follow principles found in the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals. Just wording suggestions. I didn't know how other people thought about goals frame or my suggestion to say including the Islands Trust. Over.
Thank you. And I have no issue with including the Islands Trust in the mandate. I think that giving voice to the Islands Trust in the mandate in conjunction with having a committee like this look explicitly at sustainable development goals, at reconciliation, at donut economics or circular economies. I think this is really an opportunity that will allow us to lead within the context of the Islands Trust as well, because I don't think any other island is looking as comprehensively with their OCPs as we are with this one. And if we're considering every aspect of what's going to be updated in an official community plan under these lenses, there's already been some incredible thought leadership done on this, and if we can enact it in policy, I think it'll lead us to a very strong place. Councillor Morse?
Just on the wordsmithing in B, maybe it should say the UN development goals for, the UN goals for sustainable development, which I think fits more with their, when I follow the link, the headings.
Any other pieces here in the rest of this document or terms of reference before we send this back to staff? Liam or Daniel, anything you folks would like more clarity from council as we work through this draft?
Not for me, I think this has been very helpful. I've been notes and I can circulate to council as well after this meeting to ensure we've captured what we wanted to look to adopt in the new year. And I think then we'd be working on some of the advertisement and the application stuff pieces and aiming to do that in the new year, I think, rather than launch December 18th, I think.
Yeah.
And more success. People who make New Year's resolutions to be more engaged in the community will.
Right.
Nothing more from me, Mayor. This has been really helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Fast?
Thanks. I'm happy to make the motion. And I just wanted to ask, before I do that, I'll make one question of staff, and that's that the back in September, when was that? We asked staff to schedule a committee of the whole to review the project charter. Is that something that's still coming, or did we want to talk about that here?
Right. Through the chart, I guess that was sort of council decision. If council wants that, or if council is happy with the terms of reference, to sort of start the committee, and then the first work of a committee will be to do their work plan. So the project charter, I think, was if council wanted to give more detailed guidance to the committee, then that's what we would be developing.
Thank you. Then through the chair, we can keep that as an option when we get several months into it, if more direction is needed or something like that. But I'd like to move.
I'm just going to jump in. I see that the CAO has his hand up, so I'll let Liam jump in here.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to comment on the idea of the charter, and I think that I would almost recommend against it. We've got a pretty good terms of reference, and the committee will have pretty clear direction, and with 2 council members on the committee, that will be really helpful as well. And I think you could spend a lot of time building a charter, which could be otherwise spent on getting to work on the OCP itself.
Thank you. That's what I want to know, is what happened to that project charter idea, and I'm fine with that. I'm happy to make the motion when you're ready. Okay, I move that the committee of the whole recommend that council direct staff to amend the draft terms of reference for the official community plan steering committee based on discussions held at the December 18th, 2023 meeting, and that the committee of the whole recommend that council adopt the terms of reference as amended.
Seconded by Councillor Saunders. Any discussion on this? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that carries unanimously.
Is there something in here about, I thought I saw it, now I can't find it. Who's doing the request for expressions of interest and making a recommendation on the consultant? Okay, that's C under 2.2.
Yeah.
But is that clear enough? I'm wondering if it should be 2 separate points. So one is providing guidance on the type of public engagement, and the other is issuing an EOI and advising on selection of the consultant. they're two sort of very separate things. And the consultants sort of got to go first.
So where are we right now?
I'm in 2.2
Sub
C
C.
for Charlie. It's just split it into two and maybe expand on.
Still providing guidance.
Well, yeah, I mean, okay, but it's, okay, that's what was bothering me. It's saying including selection of any public engagement consultants.
Yeah.
Who's going to run the process for hiring the consultant for the OCP that we put this $100 and some odd thousand in the budget for?
Right, so maybe it would just be consultants, because I think that's what's intended.
Yeah.
Okay.
So maybe one is for public engagement. On the hiring
Facilitate
of
the process.
consultant.
Okay. Thank you.
Is that outside what we just voted on?
Is that?
Is that outside of what we just voted on, or do we just?
I mean, technically, this is still part of the discussion that's happening at the December 8th, 2023 meeting. I'm also under no illusions that this second part of the resolution that council adopt the terms of reference as amended, that we're absolutely going to get into a conversation about the amended terms of reference on a granular level, so back to us. And with that, motion to adjourn from Councillor Getty, seconded by Councillor Wake. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Opposed, and that carries. Thank you very much, everyone. Happy holidays.
Merry Christmas.
Enjoy the Christmas break.